Bull Bear Buzz podcast for decoding markets, fueling minds.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting mix of recent headlines.
Yeah.
Things that might seem pretty unrelated at first glance. We've got, tech leaders meeting politicians, gold prices going wild, big moves in food.
Right. And some detailed economic numbers coming out of India, too.
Exactly. So our mission really is to sort of pull these threads together for you, help you see the bigger picture, what's actually significant without getting bogged down in, every single detail.
Precisely. We've pulled info from various news articles, business, economics, tech. Think of it as, trying to find the connections, the underlying currents between these different events.
And what it all might mean.
Yeah, what it means for the world around us, basically.
Okay, great. So let's dive right in. First up, this meeting that's generated quite a bit of buzz.
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi and Elon Musk meeting in Washington. But this isn't their first chat, is it?
No, not at all. This Washington meeting, it's really part of an ongoing dialogue. They first met way back in 2015 out in California.
Right.
Then again in New York in 2023. And actually earlier this year, too, February 2025, also in Washington.
So quite a history there. Suggests something significant is building.
It does seem that way. This continued engagement, it points towards a deepening relationship.
And the focus seems very much on the future, doesn't it? Technology, innovation.
Well,
what were they actually discussing?
Well, the core of these talks, including the latest one, it's been about potential collaboration.
Between India and the U.S.
Exactly. In really key areas like technology generally, space exploration, and AI. The idea is fostering stronger partnerships, driving innovation in these cutting-edge fields.
It's also interesting, Musk's role now in the U.S., he's heading up that Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, right, in the Trump administration.
Yes, that's right.
Does that add another layer to these kinds of international talks?
I think it does, yeah. It's a fascinating point. Him leading DOGE, focusing on, streamlining government, it adds another dimension to how he interacts with global leaders. Shows he's operating in both the tech world and the governmental sphere. It could definitely shape how these collaborations work.
So looking at this ongoing interaction, what's the key insight maybe for our listeners?
Well, for you, this sustained dialogue could signal maybe an acceleration.
Acceleration of what?
Of technology transfer, maybe development within India. Think EVs, space startups, how AI gets integrated. It could open up new investment avenues, new innovation opportunities down the line.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift from future tech to something much older. Gold.
Ah, yes, gold.
Prices have seen some pretty remarkable jumps lately.
Remarkable is the word. It's been a record-breaking run, really, both in India and globally.
How high did it get?
Well, MCX Gold Futures, the June contract, hit a peak of $95,935 per 10 grams.
Wow.
And internationally, COMEX Gold touched $3,371.90 meeting ounces per troy ounce. So yeah, significant surge.
Absolutely. What's driving this? What are the main reasons?
The main factors seem to be ongoing worries about the economy, specifically the impact of the trade tensions we're seeing.
Okay.
And also, dollar weakness plays a part. These kinds of global uncertainties, they often push investors toward safe havens.
And gold is the classic safe haven.
Exactly. That's the traditional role it plays.
But we did see prices pull back a little bit recently.
Yes, there was a bit of a dip. After hitting those records, you saw some profit taking.
Right.
So MCX Gold, it ended that period around $95,239 per 10 grams. And worth noting, the MCX market was actually closed on Friday. For Good Friday.
Okay. But overall, looking at the year so far, gold had a really strong performance, particularly in India.
Oh, absolutely. Year to date, gold prices in India are up something like 25%.
25%? That's substantial.
It is. And it's down to a mix of things. Those global economic worries we mentioned, rising geopolitical tensions globally, central banks buying up gold reserves, and also expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve might start cutting interest rates.
So for someone keeping an eye on economic indicators, what does this gold surge really tell us?
Well, it strongly reinforces gold's role as that safe haven asset in, volatile times. When you have economic instability or geopolitical risk is high, investors tend to flock to gold to protect value.
So the high price suggests continued uncertainty.
It could, yeah. For you, this sustained high price might indicate that this period of global economic uncertainty could be prolonged. Makes you think about, how these trends might affect your own investment approach or risk appetite.
Okay, makes sense. Let's switch gears now over to the FMCG sector in India. ITC made a pretty big acquisition announcement.
That's right, yeah. Big news. ITC has bought 100% of Shrestha Natural Bioproducts.
And that's the company behind 24 Mantra Organic.
Exactly, the well-known organic brand. The deal's worth up to about 472.5 crore.
It's a significant chunk of change. What's the strategy behind this move for ITC?
Oh, the strategy seems quite clear. ITC wants to seriously expand its footprint in the organic packaged foods market.
Which is growing fast right
It's
now.
growing very rapidly, yeah. Consumer demand driven by health concerns, sustainability, it's booming.
Yeah.
So this acquisition gives ITC a strong, established brand plus the infrastructure in a really key growth sector.
And 24 Mantra Organic, they're a pretty big name in that space already.
Oh, definitely. They're seen as pioneers, really, in the Indian organic food scene. They've got this fully integrated farm-to-fork traceability system, which is a big deal.
Okay.
They're a leading player in organic staples in India, and they also have a decent international presence, especially with the Indian diaspora.
And quite a range of products.
Yeah, over 100 organic items,
Yeah.
staples, spices, beverages, the works.
And part of their strength is that direct connection with farmers, the supply chain.
Yes, that's absolutely critical to their model. They work with roughly 27,500 farmers across something like 1.4 lakh acres of certified organic land spread over 10 states.
Yeah.
That network is a huge competitive advantage for sourcing, for quality control.
Did we hear from the companies themselves about the deal?
We did, yeah. Hemant Malik from ITC talked about being excited to bring 24 Mantra into their sort of healthy foods portfolio. He highlighted that strong back-end and sourcing network you just mentioned. And Rajashika Reddy Seelam, who founded Shrestha, he talked about being pleased that ITC would lead the brand's next growth phase after 21 years working with farmers.
And how did the market react? ITC's stock.
Positively, it seems. On the day it was announced, ITC's stock price went up a bit, by 3.1 or about 0.73%, closing at 427.25 on the BSE.
So investors like the sound of it.
Suggests confidence in the strategic fit, yeah.
So for you, the listener, what's the sort of bigger picture takeaway here?
I think it really shows how the major FMCG players are seeing that growing consumer shift towards organic.
And putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. Making significant strategic bets to capture that market. So for you, it probably means we'll see even more activity in the organic sector. Maybe more choice, better availability down the road.
Okay. Now, let's broaden out again, look at some wider economic indicators from India, specifically retail inflation figures.
Right, and this is quite noteworthy. Retail inflation in India for March, it fell to a near 6-year low.
6-year low? What was the number?
3.34%, which, yeah, has pretty big implications for the Reserve Bank of India for their monetary policy.
You'd think this almost guarantees further interest rate cuts from the RBI, wouldn't it?
It certainly makes it more likely, yes.
Yeah.
With inflation easing like this, the RBI will probably look seriously at more cuts to the repo rate.
That's the rate banks borrow from the RBI.
Correct. They've already cut it twice.
Yeah.
Down to 6% now. So this low inflation reading, it supports that trend of trying to, support economic growth, especially with global uncertainties around. The aim is cheaper borrowing for banks, which hopefully translates to lower loan rates for businesses, for individuals like you, stimulating activity.
And what actually caused this drop in inflation? What were the main drivers?
A really big factor was a significant fall in vegetable prices. They were down over 7%.
Okay.
We also saw price drops in eggs, down about 3%, and pulses, down nearly 3% as well.
Yeah.
It's a huge contrast to just last October 2024, when food inflation peaked at nearly 11%.
Wow, quite a swing. So lower inflation, potential for lower interest rates? That sounds mostly positive for the economy, right? Is there a catch?
Well, generally, yes, but you have to look at why it's falling. One factor is dampening investor confidence,
Why is that?
mostly due to the uncertainty around U.S.-led tariffs. That's hitting Indian exporters. The U.S. is a huge market for India, so trade tensions create headwinds.
Okay, that makes sense. And there's another side to the falling food prices too, isn't there? Something more concerning, especially for farmers.
Yes, this is a really important point, that steep fall in food prices. While it helps the inflation number look good, it means lower income for farmers. And that can really hurt rural consumption demand.
Right.
We've seen some pretty troubling examples recently. Tomato prices crashing in places like Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and across Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh too. Prices fell so low, farmers were just dumping their produce. it highlights how vulnerable farm incomes are.
And isn't there also a massive issue with food getting wasted after harvest in India?
There is, absolutely. Post-harvest losses are estimated at a staggering 1.52 trillion every year. Trillion, yes. Mostly down to things like poor storage, inadequate transport infrastructure, limited market access for farmers. It just makes those price drops even worse.
And when you look at the farmers themselves, their average land size, their income, it paints a tricky picture, doesn't it?
It does. The vast majority, something like 86% of Indian farmers, they farm less than 2 hectares. And surveys from NABARD and the NSSO, they show average monthly income for farming households is quite low compared to some other emerging economies. Plus, there's a big gap between rural and urban spending power. Just highlights the need to boost rural incomes, stimulate that demand.
So really, understanding these inflation numbers means looking way beyond just the headline figure.
Precisely. You have to dig into the underlying factors. Lower inflation looks good, but if it's driven by crashing food prices hurting farmers, that presents a really significant challenge. Needs careful thought, proper policy responses.
Okay, understood.